Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. It's time for the Another View Roundtable. Today's topics: what's in a name, how ethnic names impact your child's future, more criticism of President Obama about his commitment to the African American community, violence at the Virginia Beach Oceanfront, why can't we all get along in the resort city, and racism and commercials, a lethal economic combination. Roger Chesley, Carol Pretlow, Wil LaVeist, and Bill Thomas are here to talk about these and other issues. It's the Another View Roundtable, right after this news from NPR.
Discussing the issues and celebrating the successes of the African American community. This is Another View.
Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. We've got lots to talk about with our roundtable today, so let's get to it. Please welcome Roger Chesley, columnist for the Virginian-Pilot, and you can read his column every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Hey, Roger.
Barbara, how are you?
I'm fabulous. How are you?
I'm glad to be back.
Good. NSU Professor of Political Science, Carol Pretlow. Hi, Carol.
Hi, Barbara.
So glad that you're here today with us.
Too.
Our favorite community activist, Bill Thomas. How you doing, Bill?
A pleasure, everybody. It's
Everywhere I go,
good.
Bill, people say, that Bill Thomas.
Are they single?
And journalist, author, and talk show host Wil LaVeist. Hey, Will, how you doing?
How you doing, Barbara? And happy Mother's Day to you
Thank
and
you
all
very
the wonderful
much.
mothers out there.
Oh, thank you so
Especially
much.
my wife.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Happy Mother's
Who's
Day
not
to all the
listening.
moms who's not listening, right? Well, before we get into our discussion, we have some great news to share with our audience. We're really doing the happy dance around the studio today. First of all, Lisa Godley was just nominated by the National Association of Black Journalists for a Salute to Excellence Award for her story on Take Six, the musical group.
All right.
And we also then discovered Roger Chesley is also a finalist for a Salute to Excellence Award. You want to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, set of 3 columns in the commentary category. One of them includes the piece that I did about Leslie Paul and RAPS, the swimming program that tries to teach kids who are underprivileged, especially blacks and Latinos, how to swim.
How to swim, absolutely. Something very critical here in our area, definitely. And then our very own Carol Pretlow is just received a fellowship, is that correct? And you will be doing what this summer?
I will be doing research on presidential leadership and foreign policy doctrines, and at the Virginia Foundation for the Humanities.
That's fantastic.
I'm excited
So we got rocket scientists in the group, y'all. So congratulations to everyone. We appreciate that.
Beautiful.
So let's get into our topics today. Virginia Beach weekend happened 2 weekends ago. 40,000 at the oceanfront, 3 shootings, 3 stabbings, 148 arrests for misdemeanors and traffic summonses with disorderly conduct and no seatbelt as the prominent charges. Why can't we get along in Virginia Beach? What is the deal about groups, large groups of people going to the oceanfront, and there seeming to be an issue, particularly if it involves African Americans? Bill, I'm going to start with you.
Untrained, ungodly, unchurched, unparented, disrespectful children. We've talked about that 1,000 times. There's nothing wrong with Virginia Beach. You go out there, obey the law. This never happened. This never happened when we were growing up. It's tragic. And then we're going to blame the police or Virginia Beach. Give me a break. Those kids down there are just out of control. They're maniacs to society, and that's black or white. It's sad that it's our kids, because when I was growing up, we were taught not to be like those ill-mannered white kids, and you get smacked in the teeth if you did. Now we got a group of kids out here. Then we got police and pastors and mayors and everybody else are afraid to call them what they are. Unruly, unparented, worthless maniacs that have no respect for human decency. And that's the problem.
Okay, the event was supposed to be college kids. from colleges all over Virginia.
This has nothing to do with
Correct?
college kids.
Okay.
This has something to do with unruly, unmanageable, unparented, pretty much, unfortunately, single-parented household kids that do not have or have not been treated correctly.
Roger.
Well, I think there are so many ways to go with this. I mean, for instance, we know that some of the kids were local, were not college kids. We know that some were. We know that the police and the city officials didn't exactly know how many people were going to come initially because it was not events that necessarily needed certain permits or certain licenses.
Because they were held in private
Exactly.
entities.
Right. And when you have a cohort of some of the people that were there were underage and couldn't drink legally, you knew that they were not going to be allowed inside in certain clubs and other events. I had an interview with Mayor Sessoms earlier this week, and one of the things that he said was, look, we know that there were problems there. We're going to try to do better, but I don't want to indict everybody was there. Was it 1% of the populace that was the problem? Was it 3%? Because obviously with 30,000 to 40,000 people there, that was the estimate, and you had this few number of arrests and summonses, obviously it wasn't everybody that was doing something wrong. Yes, there were people there that were causing problems. And as the pilot went to great pains, unfortunately, to say about 75% of those who were arrested were African American.
And
we normally do not say what the race of arrestees are in a particular incident. It's usually not germane necessarily to the particular particular story.
Why should it matter? I mean, why was it necessary to point out? Okay, why, Bill? Why?
It is germane.
We wouldn't say that in another event. We wouldn't say, okay, 25% were black, 50% were white, and the rest were other races. We normally don't say that, so it was
down
unusual.
Any street in Norfolk, Virginia Beach.
No, let's talk about this particular incident.
Well, let's talk about this incident. You see these kids; they are not prepared to deal with human decency, and that's a fact. And you can try to cover it up. You can try to close your eyes. You can try to say it's not happening. It is happening.
I'm not trying to cover up anything. I just thought that this was something that we don't normally do, and I don't have any say so in that particular issue. But it was somewhat unusual for us to do it.
And I have to admit, I was surprised, and as well, I think a lot of people in journalism, when there's such a fight in journalism, in such a fight to not identify race if it is not germane, because the fact of the matter is there was a disturbance.
It is germane.
It doesn't. Okay, hold on a second. Carol, go ahead.
Yeah, Bill, you identified symptoms, and I understand that. But what are the solutions? I mean, to say they're poor, they're black, they're uneducated, they're undisciplined.
Are those facts? Are those facts? No, you're saying symptoms. Are those facts?
They are facts. They are symptomatic facts.
No, they're facts.
But what's the solution to eradicating this problem, both from the police perspective, the parental perspective, the educational perspective? How do we get beyond this?
Well,
I'm afraid to talk because Bill might. But one of the things I was struck by is, because I spend time on two campuses in particular, Hampton University and ODUs. I'm a doctoral student at ODU. My radio show is on Hampton University. I spend a lot of time with students, and then my own children, who are no longer children anymore, are in school. And I was struck by the fact that, one, talking with the students, they talked to me about a lot of what happened with the negativity wasn't the students at all. That was a lot of local individuals coming, because when you hear a party is going on, you want to be where the action is. So that's one. The other thing that struck me is that this is happening within the context of what happened back in '89, back when I was in college, and the whole Greek Fest event, which we know Virginia Beach has gone through pains of really getting over that overreaction, and they had the National Guard out and all that. And I was in college, and what I was struck by was how these kids now had little to no sense or context that happened.
Absolutely.
And I was like, wow, I must be getting old, or something is going on and I think, to Carol's point, that a big part of the solution is there needs to be a connection of what has happened? What does that mean when all those people gather down there and all of these undercurrents? Because why race bubbled up as an issue is because in the back of the mind of the journalists at the Pilot, as opposed to really bringing it out and tying in this context and why this is such an issue, they bring that up because the 89 issue was so much of a race issue. And I think that what's missing and what would really be helpful is that the students now would be aware, and we got to find a way to bring in the context and make the connection between these things to understand that there's a history of this kind of thing going on and why people react.
When you hear people in the paper saying things like, how do we keep those people from coming to Virginia Beach and so forth, again, that's a separation, I would think, Bill, as opposed to trying to be inclusive.
No, that's a solution. I think you ought to have people. You ought to have morals out there that's acceptable, and it's not unacceptable. Black, white, Asian, it doesn't matter.
But Bill, they said the majority. Again, even Will Sessom said the majority of the people there were not the troublemakers.
Right.
And so should you exclude the entire event?
The thing that bothers me mostly is the fact that when we were growing up, Carol and all of us, when we saw that, we stopped it ourselves. We would say, and your parents used to always tell us, when you go out of the house, you represent this house. Now, everybody don't want to believe that anymore. You represent me. I know Barbara. I know all of you guys were told that. And then when we see this malfunction, this uncivilized behavior going on in our communities all the time. There's a murder in either Norfolk, Newport News, or Hampton, or someplace every day with these kids, or somebody's get kicked out of school, or somebody's fighting somebody, or somebody's fighting the teacher that was in your paper the other day. We have to police ourselves. We do not need the government to do that.
Bill,
we need to get our kids back under control.
Bill, can we put this on the table, Bill? That you did not grow up in the golden age of America, where nothing bad happened and everybody took care of each other.
Oh, yes, they
did.
When
Bill,
something bad happened like
talking
this,
over me, Bill.
One at a time.
Bill, people got high in your era. People got drunk. People caroused.
Absolutely.
And when you put a combination of alcohol, as Roger pointed out, kids in the street not being able to drink in the legal area. You put a combination of alcohol and kids that just want to be where the action is and just want to impress girls and bringing beefs from their high school out to the place. That happened in your era. Sorry, it did.
Let me say this. The according to the Beach Weekend organizers, which everybody was making a big deal out of, they didn't hear from the organizers, but they put out a statement that said Beach Weekend is in its 4th year, and its organizers have gone above and beyond to ensure the safety of all participants and the community, as well as reflecting positively on the city of Virginia Beach, its residents, and the many tourists who choose to vacation here regularly. The city of Virginia Beach has never reported any major incidents during the years Beach Weekend was held. We look forward to working with city officials, etc.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
A couple of things. One, the lack, I read the statement. You allowed me to read that statement before we got on the air today. And their lack of specifics are very telling in that statement of what they did not do in reaching out in terms of city officials. This is where we're going to be. This is the events. They did a lot better job of publicizing the event on local college campuses and as far away as Richmond, because VCU was
they use social media a lot to
okay, so that's
get the
one.
word out.
And then secondly, keep these things in perspective. That same weekend, there was what has been termed a riot on the Colorado State campus. Near on the campus, because several people had parties in a particular neighborhood. That only involved 300 some people, and it was all sorts of confrontations between police officers and the party goers there, mostly white. Now, if you think about it, with such a much smaller crowd, there was confrontations that broke out where alcohol was involved and college students were involved. So it's you have to remember oftentimes, regardless of the race, when young people are involved, alcohol involved, a lot of people get together. Sometimes people don't act the way that they should.
Because they don't have a home to go home to.
Well, that might
because
be.
Because I'd have went home, I'd have been on that TV, you'd have went home, you would have had hell to pay. Y'all just want to make excuses, and it's not acceptable.
All I'm saying, yes, people should be safe at the oceanfront. Planning has to be better. But I'm not ready to indict everybody that was in that crowd that day, because not everybody in that crowd was messing up and acting like knuckleheads. And that's one of the things that the mayor told me in my interview with him. He said the vast majority can't be painted with a broad brush. And that is a quote from him.
Exactly. And there were a lot of single-parented students from ODU, from Hampton, from colleges all over the place who handled themselves with more than a dignified manner.
We actually have a phone call. Jeff joins us from Hampton. Hi, Jeff. You're in the air.
Good afternoon, folks. I love this conversation, and I just want to say a couple things. One is today, I mean, I grew up in the 50s and 60s. And today, kids are more connected with their friends, and there's more of a alliance and a family with their friends than with their families. So there is no real family of origin. Parents are busier today, so now they're drawing from not wisdom, but knowledge that they're receiving from being connected with their friends and the internet. So when it comes to the family home bringing like Bill and I had and you all had, it's not like that. They don't have that sense of reverence and awe and fear and respect that we had growing up. So when it comes to authority, they don't care. They'll drink when they're not supposed to. They'll act up because they don't care that they'll go in jail. They'll get out of jail. They know that the consequences are not grave enough. And I'm sorry, but I have to say, Bill, you're my man.
Thank you, sir.
I'm like you, man. I'm like, look, there's got to be some accountability here. And it doesn't matter what color they are. It's all across the board. And I'm going to say one more thing. Scripture said that long ago, that in the last days, there's going to be some wayward kids that are going to be against their parents and against everything they should be taught. So this is nothing new. We're just saying the weeds finally coming to grow.
Okay, thank you so much, Jeff. Go ahead.
Barbara, I'd like to know, when did these guys go to college? Was it in the 60s? Was it in the 70s? Or was it in the 1860s? I mean, what are you talking about? What happened in the 1960s?
We had consequences. I got the
60s was turbulent 60s where they had all the protests and everything was going on.
In the 70s when folks was getting high.
It's Mother's Day
What
weekend.
are they talking about?
And I know y'all don't want to hear this, but it's Mother's Day weekend. Somebody's got to go home and raise these children. That's the problem. You want to get some consequences and you want some action. You cannot be an absentee parent. You cannot be out here working these two jobs to pay for your boat, your Mercedes, your trip to Disney World, Orlando Park. Somebody's got to go home, and I'm saying mostly moms need to go home and raise their children. And the dad needs to be there supporting their families.
You know, one thing I think it can't be said enough about this, in that if you're a city official in Virginia Beach, you cannot tolerate lawlessness on the streets. And I think
from anyone.
Right. Yes. And I think if there had been some more serious issues where the police had actually hurt some folks and arrested them, we haven't heard that. Then it would have been much more, I think some of the emotions would have been more heightened. But I think the message has come down from the police chief, from the mayor, and from other city officials. We're not going to tolerate this. And I don't think that the city should. I don't think any city should. You know, when you invite people in your town, or if they come uninvited, there's a certain level of decorum and respect for the law that is supposed to be followed. And I think that, you know, next year is going to be a big test. But we even saw this past weekend, it was much calmer at the oceanfront.
I was just going to add that I think that the organizers of the event have to connect the dots of the context. They can't continue to just do an event at the event and do it as if it's in a vacuum of what happened in 1989. And again, I remember that vividly. I was in college then.
But a lot of college folks weren't even born in 1989.
And that's why it's up to the event promoters and the people who remember this to put things in context, because that's what struck me. Kids not even born that are out there. It's like, what riot you talking about? What?
If my children would have been out there and they would crack their head open, them acting foolishly, fighting with people, cursing with people, using the bathrooms on the streets and in the alleyways of Virginia Beach. Crack his head wide open. Leave him alive. But crack his head wide open so he'll know that there's lawlessness, there's people that are decent, and there are something else. And I would have also been ashamed if my children were there if they didn't do something to try to stop it.
Does it bother any of you all that once again the black community then gets painted with this broad brush that don't allow those people to come back to Virginia Beach?
Well, of course. We're always treated, I think, as not as individuals. And Leonard Pitts often says this: when one of us does something great, it's only considered that individual's success. But when one of us does something bad, it kind of shows on all of us. It's an unfair and irrational, I think, approach to how we're treated. But I don't know how that changes.
Doesn't. It's reality.
Okay, let's go on to our next topic. What's in a name? The National Bureau of Economic Research conducted a study called "Are Emily and Greg More Employable Than Lakeisha and Jamal?"
Absolutely.
A field experiment on labor market discrimination. Now, the study found that job applicants with white names needed to send about 10 resumes to get one callback. Those with African American names needed to send around 15 resumes to get one callback. So
Who wrote that? White man.
White. I'm just telling you what the researchers said.
Well, it's true.
So, and now there are articles that came out recently about African American males in particular who are having to do things like if they have an ethnic name, making it a letter. Taking off their resumes any affiliation with a minority group. I don't know what you do if you attend an HBCU, but
attend a great
because
one.
That's when you're
attend a great one.
Attend a great one, and then you're
correct.
okay. And
you're
then you get
more
by.
than okay.
And then you're more than okay.
That is correct.
Okay, so what about this name thing, Will?
I would beg to differ. There was a 2009 article in the New York Times where a brother graduated from Morehouse, which is a great HBCU, and had tremendous opportunities that he got. The position was open to him when they were talking to him.
What was his name?
But his name was Williams. So when they were talking to him over the phone, he was very much in the run for the job. But then when he met for lunch, it was a different story. So here you have a young man graduated from an excellent school that can compete with any school in the nation, Williams, which is a relatively neutral name, even though there's a lot of blacks named Williams, and then got the opportunity, got the interview. But when he got to the lunch meeting, it all went downhill.
So that's one case. That's
one case.
Well, but I mean, Barry Jabbar Sykes, who's 37 years old, he has a degree in mathematics from Morehouse College, and he now uses Barry J. Sykes, even though he's been called Jabbar his entire life. I mean, what, Bill? Go ahead.
It just works. It works easier. WL Bill Thomas works easier. So you do it. You do what you have to do to make it sell.
Do you really think that if you grow up with a name that someone has named you, that it should be necessary in order for you to get a job?
Absolutely.
That you have to change your name?
You don't have to change your name. The Wall Street Journal had a story in the other day saying that the most popular names for the people who earn money. It was in there the other day, and it's for whites and blacks. They said shorten the name, 4 letters. I mean, that's what people do. That's what actors do. That's what people do to sell their brand. And if you want to go out there and play the game your way, and then you're in a capitalist system and you lose it, that's fine. There's not a problem with that.
Carol?
Well, I guess I see it from both sides. Of course, your identity, your name is a part of your identity, but also survival should be part of your identity. And in surviving in the work world, you have to do what is necessary. Just as you get an education to improve your chances of getting a job, it might be necessary to be the J. William instead of the Jabbar Chardonnay or something.
How then do we impart upon younger mothers and fathers
People use these crazy names.
who choose to select these very ethnic names?
You doing my parents did. Name their child Wilbert Francisco LaVeist. You don't have a. That's right. That's my full name. You don't have a shot of knowing what this guy looks like until he gets there.
There you go.
But I think that I think that for the listeners, I think they're hearing that we're not denying that this happens, and I think that that's the point, that it does happen, and we should be looking at whether that is fair that it happens. But you definitely have to do what you have to do in order to survive.
Roger?
I commend Will for pulling out the 2009 article from the New York Times. The thing that was most disappointing to me is here you have individuals, regardless of what their name is, when their face is seen, that put them further down on the list, despite their credentials, despite going to the schools and doing what we've always been taught is the right way to go about getting ahead in the professional field. They were cut down a few notches with some racism that might not have been overt, but was very subtle, and it's hard to quantify or qualify. And
and then there are also a lot of the HR professionals will say off the record that they will look at a resume and see a certain name, and that person doesn't matter what their credentials are. They never make it to the front of the line to begin with.
And that has nothing to do with what your name. That's
Just what it is.
To me is a very it's a form of racism whichever way you cut it. And I think the only thing we can do is to make sure that we're doing everything that we still can in preparing ourselves, but secondly, speak out when we actually see these incidents.
And one interesting twist in the article that was talking about a lot of these professional African American males who are trying to get jobs and so forth is the election of President Obama. They were stating that they feel that some feel that because he has reached that height that there's no more room for anyone else to move up. Too much of a stretch for you, Bill?
Oh, way too far. Way too far. And President Obama is a special character. He's a special person. He was accomplished all his life. He has a whole different set of things around him that makes him special. So
Obama's a pretty ethnic name.
Yeah, it gets okay.
Folks had to get used
he's
to
a special person. He was at a special time, and he took advantage and leveraged every opportunity in the world. He didn't go to public schools. He just did what he had to do. I congratulate him. Okay. So we made it work for him.
Okay, but I like to go back to what I pointed out earlier, and what Roger was trying to get back to also is that, okay, we agree that this happens. But what about this greater problem that once you've done everything you're supposed to do, we're all sitting here college educated. Once you've done what you're supposed to do, once you've got all of the experience and this issue of whether you're qualified or not, which always seems to be a huge issue with us, once you've got all of that addressed, what happens when you have that lunch meeting and they're all excited about you, but now you got the lunch meeting and then now you go down to the bottom of the list.
Right, and
that's the big problem.
Exactly. Oh, life is over. Excuse the world.
So how do you? So you're making light of this, but
I'm not making light of it. Go start your own business.
You're talking over me.
There you go.
One at a time.
What I'm saying is, and when people do that, it's because they don't want you to get your point over. And what I'm saying is that there are a lot of families, a lot of individuals, you talked about single parent households. There's a snowball effect that happens when people are unable to get employment and unable to take care of their families and unable to do those things. So Carol asked earlier, what are the solutions? We need to be offering some solutions rather than just spurting out, cliches and talking about, just get a job.
You said start your own business.
Start your own business.
Bill, you act like that's just so easy.
It's not easy. It's hard. And in life, things that are really, really, that come across good, it's not easy. It's very hard. It's very difficult. Stop trying to work for white man and then get cursed out or called names, or they call you something or don't recognize you. Get some talent. Start someplace else. Start your own business and be self-sufficient. That's what we don't have anymore. We don't have options. We used to have small minority businesses and large ones too that we had options with, and banks and mortgage companies. And there's none anymore. And the hospital.
That's a good solution. Start your own business.
It is a solution. No, it is a solution.
I'm agreeing with you. I've got my own business. I'm 100% in agreement with you.
They just tore down that hospital, that black hospital over there. What a tragedy.
Yeah. But, and I agree, because I grew up in a time when we did have a large number of black businesses. But you also now have a problem. There's a budgetary, financial, economic problem here. So just saying, start your own business with what money? And how do you survive while you're starting that business? Because the money just might not be there for you.
Sell your Cadillac. Sell your Cartier watch. Start your business.
If you're just joining us, we're talking with the Another View Roundtable. Roger Chesley with the Virginian-Pilot, Carol Pretlow with Norfolk State University, community activist Bill Thomas, and author, journalist, and talk show host Wil LaVeist. Go ahead, Roger.
For the non-entrepreneurs out there, and I count myself as one, I've done a okay staying in a business that has dwindled incredibly since I started back in the early 80s. And not everybody is going to, and I've said this before, not everybody is going to start his or her own business. And I do think there's still a place for us in corporate America, in the media profession. And I think you have to make sure you're doing all the things in terms of networking. Make sure that you are strong in your particular craft. And also try to be abreast of new developments in technology. I fault myself for not being as strong as I need to be in some of those particular areas, but I'm still trying to do what I can. I know that this particular field has changed dramatically in the last 30 years, and it's incumbent upon me to make myself as valuable and as full of as many skills as possible.
And then you just have to get out there with the rest with everyone else and compete. Try your best to compete.
And in the area of business, since Bill is not offering specifics, I would tell people to look at businesses that have low financial entry, such as looking at the web, looking at multi-level marketing. There are businesses, like Mary Kay that have existed for quite a long while that have a lower barrier of entry where you're able to be independent, you're able to develop wealth to yourself. And I tell young people, I spoke at Norfolk State just recently, and I told all of those students, if all you do is come out of here and work for somebody else, you've underachieved. Because that was okay for my generation, that we worked and expected to stay at a job for 30 years and get a pension and make $50,000 working for IBM. But for you all, you've got to be able to not only work for someone else, if that's what it calls, but you need to develop a business yourself.
And actually, it does work. You have to. My son did well in undergraduate school, went to law school, graduated with honors, was going to be a Navy JAG. Sequestration came along. I told him, you got to go find something else to do. Try to figure out a way to take care of elderly people. Try to figure out a way to tutor kids. There's all kinds of things that you can take your talents. Go out there and manage the kids that are going to come down and try to tear up Virginia Beach next year. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that you can make money.
What you name your son, Jaquan?
Oh, no.
Go ahead, Roger.
and one other thing and I've talked to one of the editors at the paper about this, there are still, even in blue-collar jobs, there are still some very lucrative opportunities. If you ever have a plumber coming to your house, they sometimes charge $125 an hour just to show up.
Yes.
Exactly. So, there are still some things that might be considered not book smart, but still very vital to what people need. And if you can tap into some of those things, you can still make a good living for yourself.
You can be a plumber and let your pants sag too.
That's actually one more thing, because I had to go get my boots fixed and resoled the other day. That Hispanics, y'all call them now, charged me $100 to resole those shoes. I just said those boots. I said impossible. The Mexicans are making money.
Size 22 shoe, man.
Well, no,
everybody can make money. Okay, let's go on to
I didn't understand why it was important to know what the background
why was it necessary?
Why was that?
And the Mexicans are taking over.
Oh, Bill, please.
Anyway, let's go on to the next topic. Speaking of Morehouse, big controversy at Morehouse because the president, John Wilson, changed the format of the baccalaureate address to a panel discussion because the guest speaker that they invited, Pastor Kevin Johnson, published a piece in the April 14th edition of the Philadelphia Tribune titled "A President for Everyone Except Black People." In the piece, Johnson wrote, when one compares President Obama to his predecessors, the decrease in African-American appointments is astounding. Obama has not moved African-American leadership forward, but backwards. People are a little upset that the lack of diversity in Obama's cabinet in the second term is there.
That's your man.
Roger.
Yeah,
that's your boy.
I think you're going to see more and more of this during his second term because I think a lot of people held their tongue in the first term because they wanted him to do well and they wanted him to get to be elected twice, and election and re-election. And I think, yes, there needs to be this discussion. There needs to be a more overt challenge to the president. Look, you are helping lots of Americans. We get that. But there are some issues critical to African Americans that you have been, horribly silent on, and we want you to speak up for us too. We helped you get back into office, and it's not because we want you to be, anti somebody else. We just want you to be pro us for some of the issues, especially jobs, our place in the criminal justice system, where it's so much out of whack with the amount of crimes that we do and how we're sentenced for them. We want you to speak up for that. And if you're not going to speak up for it, who would be president would speak up more than you?
He has nominated Charlotte Mayor Anthony Fox, who's African-American and Transportation Secretary, but he has not been confirmed yet. And also Thomas Perez, who's a first-generation Dominican-American and Assistant U.S. Attorney for Civil Rights, to serve as Labor Secretary. Neither one of those have been confirmed yet, but too little, too late. Carol, you're the politician, political person here.
I don't think too little, too late. And I think that realistically, as a politician, which he is or was, the first goal in the first administration is to establish yourself and to make sure that you are as solid as possible with both your party and the opposition party. To do that, if he had appointed a large number of African Americans or women, then he would have gotten attacked even more than he was. So now he really has no excuse because the second term, you see where my brain is, the second term offers more leeway. Even in his addresses, you see a different president than you saw the first time.
Well, but the other issue in this, though, is the whole idea of Morehouse changing its perspective and what they normally do because someone criticized the president. Is it okay for black folks to criticize Obama, Will?
Of course. Of course it is. But I mean, I think Morehouse, I don't know the details of Morehouse and their culture, but I would imagine whatever they're doing thinking in terms of funding for the university and how people may react, and I don't think they necessarily think it in terms of.
Headed the White House initiative on historically black colleges before he became president, so he was in. And I think that's
a lot more of what it's about. Again, I think one of the things that I find interesting is I had the opportunity to cover President Obama's first election. And I was always struck, and you all know I lived in Chicago. I had some exposure to him before he had risen. And to me, he's been totally consistent with who he is and how he has always been. It's been the community who has put all of these different things on him, of him being a transformative figure and all of these things. I remember vividly standing in that stadium in Denver when he accepted the nomination and looking around and seeing all that euphoria and people crying and putting all of their hopes and dreams in him. But meanwhile, he has been very consistent. I remember I was trying to find this article back that students at Harvard had talked and criticized him about when he became the president of the Review and how he had very much they actually criticized him as becoming part of the establishment rather than making some of the differences that they had hoped that he would do.
Well, Kevin Johnson wrote that he said that Obama is more of a historical leader than he is a transformational leader for the African American community.
And I don't think that's not his fault. That's what other people have put on him.
And I think that might be true, but I also think that he has to understand that people expect more out of him than what he's delivered so far. And again, yes, he's a president of all the people, but any president, usually when they start, he is looked to be the one person who can make the most change in any individual in the country. And I think we need to keep demanding more from him, because I don't think he's delivered enough.
Actually, not only has he not delivered, it's really been a damper on HBCUs. Actually, funding for HBCUs is quite down. Funding for Pell Grants, funding for minorities in terms of those who don't have access to colleges and universities is down. It's been shifted to the Hispanic communities and the, quote, minority-serving institutions. I looked at a statistic the other day in one of the agencies. I think the Hispanics got like $180 million and the Asian Hispanics got $120 million and HBCUs got $877,000. I mean, but and Mr. Wilson, who is down at Morehouse now, was heading all that up. It's been terrible. It's terrible leadership. The moral things that I think are worse, him not speaking out on the terrible crime and deaths in our community, which cost him nothing. But the one thing that he did do, which is a very, very good point, is that the percentage of African Americans voting, going out and voting, now exceeds in participation those of white voters. I think it went up to so that's a good part of it. But in terms of him delivering something for the African American community is dismal. It's not there. It's gone the other way, and that's all politics. So it tells you that when you sit here and vote emotionally on issues and on the actuality, when George Allen lost the senator race here, he was one of the most supportive senators for HBCUs with the learning high-tech infrastructure law that he passed and helping our institution get hundreds of millions of dollars, I mean, on a fair basis and a competitive basis. So if you really add all these things up, you can see where right now we're actually being hurt, terribly hurt, and nobody, you don't hear any of our congressmen talking about it, or our elected officials, our black academians talk about how Mr. Obama has hurt HBCUs.
And that's why I wanted to say that I don't think appointments is the answer. I don't think, because he's quoting these stats happening on the watch of Morehouse's president being on the head of this board. So I think that he can do things in terms of what's going to really help accumulate wealth. You mentioned something about starting businesses. What can be done in that area? You mentioned stuff about housing. I mean, the government in the past has made specific acts that have helped to give people homes, which has enabled them to build wealth. So I'd like to see him do some of those things, and then also I'd like to see him maybe do some things in the area that increases the pipeline of talent that will come into politics and people who will actually do real things and really make a difference. Because the appointments of just your buddy who's going to do the same thing that you're doing, this is not going to move the needle for a black community either.
Okay, last word, Roger, because I want to move on to this other topic real quick.
Yeah, he's going to have some difficulty in getting programs through Congress. I understand that. But where is he using the bully pulpit to speak out on some of these things in a way that draws attention, in a way that forces debate on some of these issues? That's where I think he's come up far short, and it's been very disappointing.
I agree, but on the other hand, that when he does that, then he gets criticism about campaigning rather than ruling and leading.
But he's going to be criticized anyway. Get the debate started, make the statement. Sometimes you have to stand up for something.
All right, let's move on to this next topic because I really want to get this in. 3 women and a little girl who had been held hostage for a decade were rescued this week by an African-American man who responded to cries for help from one of the women, Amanda Berry. His name is Charles Ramsey, and his comments about the rescue has everyone talking. Let's listen.
What was the reaction on the girls' faces? I can't imagine to see the sunlight, to be around people.
I knew something was wrong when a little pretty white girl ran into a black man's arms. Something is wrong here. Dead giveaway. Dead giveaway.
Charles, thank you very much.
Dead giveaway.
Thank you very much for your time. And
either she homeless or she got problems. That's the only reason why she run to a black man.
Now, people laugh.
I love it.
But what is that saying? What is he saying about society and in terms of how our races intermingle?
I think actually you really got to think of it in terms of Cleveland. He lived on the west end of Cleveland.
Okay.
That's 99% white. Black people live on the east side of Cleveland. So he is kind of an anomaly just being on the west side. And that address, I lived in Cleveland for 20 years. So in that neighborhood, that is purely ethnic white folks live there. But then it tells you another story how he put that in context. So I think it's pretty well taken and truthful.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it mirrors everything that we've been talking about earlier on this show. And, I really enjoyed watching him and listening to him because, being in the media, and you guys, Barbara, you broadcast people are famous for finding the most inarticulate person
because
possible
they're the ones who will
talk about. But here we had somebody who, because, guys like Bill, they're social elites, so they look at this guy and feel like he doesn't really properly represent black people. When you hear him speaking and how sincere he is and how raw he is and how obviously intelligent he is, and and then he's comical also in a little way, but the fact of what he did and how so many of us find ourselves in a situation like that and maybe walk away, maybe turn, I think is a lot to be said for him and people of his ilk. Bill,
Roger,
it's been a fascinating Rorschach test on him. For one, unlike other cases, he actually was involved in the rescue. So that's part of the reason why he was interviewed. Secondly, you've had discussions about, are folks laughing at him? Because so often you get the Antoine Dodsons, you get somebody like this where they seem to be such a spectacle. But here you have somebody who I think was very truthful in his comments. He has this somewhat checkered past where he had these domestic violence convictions in his past, but yet and still he's somebody who helped save a woman and brought about a truly horrible case that's been going on for a decade involving these three women. And I take my hat off to him. He got involved, and the last thing I'll say about it, it really makes you think about what's going on with the Cleveland Police Department and their response to some of the problems that were going on and some of the calls we've heard about. There have been complaints at this house before and not really following up on it.
Carol?
Yeah, I was very struck by his truthfulness and his sincerity. And I think that in Capsule, he summarized what post-racial America is, because we're still in that little category,
and we're still having to do that. Well, you had something else you wanted to add?
Yeah, and I think that you see a lot of what was going on there. You see the issue of class going on there as well. It's not always about race, but race and class are these twin siblings that we always are struggling with in this country.
Okay, we got about 3 minutes left, and I know I do want to talk about Mountain Dew really quickly though. And I know with 3 minutes left, that's really unfair. But the fact is that they did pull their ad. Can we play it?
All right, man, we got them all lined up. Nail this little sucker. Come on, which one is he? Point to him.
It's me. You should have gave me some more. I'm nasty.
I don't think I can do this.
It's easy. Just point to him.
You better not snitch on a player.
No.
He's wearing the do-rag.
Snitches get stitches, fool.
Come on, it's the one with the 4 legs.
You thought you was gonna catch me? Keep your mouth shut.
No.
Keep your mouth shut.
No.
I'm gonna get out of here and I'm gonna do you up. Keep your mouth shut.
I can't do this! I can't do this! No! 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 No!
She's just gotta do it.
If you've seen the spot, it is a white woman who has been battered. All of the men in the lineup are African American, with the exception of the goat that is talking. And this spot was done by a rapper named, what's his name?
Tyler, the Creator.
Tyler, the Creator. Thank you. And the whole thing is just done in such bad taste. Where was Mountain Dew when, in terms of pulling the spot before it ever hit the air?
I didn't see anything wrong with it. What's wrong with the ad?
Okay, let's see. It's very stereotypical. You know what? Your response is the same thing that Tyler, the Creator's response was, because he said, those were my friends. You know, and so
if you
therefore,
don't like it,
wait a minute. Let me tell you what he said. He said, those are my friends. And so I don't understand what the big controversy is. My question is, how do we make sure that our young people have some things in context? Back to you were talking about the history, that they understand that this is a problem, that you don't portray these stereotypes that way. Well,
that's the thing that really struck me because Tyler reacted to, and I read some of the things, he reacted to being called a racist. And I think people who called him racist were wrong, because racism, when you understand that you have to be in a position of power and you're doing something deliberate to keep someone down. Okay. So, but what he was missing again was that context, to be able to see, okay, I think this is funny. This is my friends, but hold on, how is the audience and in the context of the viewers, how are they gonna see this? And that's where I think someone in Mountain Dew should have been able to say, okay, yeah, this is funny. We know you know what you're intending, but how is this going to be received, and how do we need to look at this?
Wow,
Bill.
Y'all are missing it.
We are.
You're missing it. You cut the TV off. You manage what your children watch. I don't need Mountain Dew to tell me how my kids are going to see something
well,
in
it's on
context.
the internet, but go ahead.
It doesn't matter. You tell them. So you teach them, you train them so that they can be discernible of what's right and wrong. I don't need Mountain Dew to tell them, or the government, or President Obama,
that's not the,
or
that's
Mayor
not the
says.
issue
It is the issue.
Discussed.
Raise your children.
Hold on one
issue.
second.
Don't let the TV or the internet raise your children.
Hold on just one second. I just want to tell my producer, Lisa, we're going to forego things to view and do and keep the conversation going. Okay, now, go ahead, Bill.
Not just finish. Raise your children. You letting the internet? I mean, don't they know better? I mean, you don't teach them history? Do you not sit down and tell them? I'm not missing the point. That is the point.
This ad was despicable on so many levels. It's even hard to say where between the whole issue of domestic violence, between stereotypes of a white woman being beat up by black men, when we know mostly it's intra-racial crime that takes place, not interracial crime, to the fact that you have these stereotypes of the men who are in the lineup. I don't understand why Tyler thought that this was funny. And, you know, I guess I'm always learning that I have to relearn what's going on out there in pop culture nowadays. But, you know, between accidental racists, you know, it's just so much that I'm having to learn again.
But then here's the other question, too, because with Mountain Dew, also, Lil Wayne's endorsement was pulled, also by Mountain Dew,
right,
because he referred to Emmett Till, or compared Emmett Till to a female body part. And I'm not going there in terms of the song. But first of all, is Mountain Dew trying to get into this whole hip-hop culture to continue their brand, obviously, but in a very, very negative way?
Well, again, it's when Lil Wayne or when these guys are creating these things, I think they're thinking, oh, that's cool, or that's funny, or that's provocative. They're not thinking in terms of, like I said earlier about 1989 Greek Fest. Oh, that's why we need to be conscious about what's happening now. So that's why it requires, you know, a Mountain Dew, and you have editors in this process. Yeah. That's what this issue is. This issue is not about what you allow your kids to watch. We all agree with that. The issue here is about the editors in the process. Okay, you think that's cool? That's a nice catchphrase, but how is it going to be received in the context, and how does it meet what our brand goals are? Exactly. And that's the breakdown here.
All right, guys, we are out of time. Literally, the hour is gone. So thank you so very much for joining us. And I want to let our audience know that next week we're talking with author Ron James Jr. about his new book, The Double V, How Wars, Protests, and Harry Truman Desegregated America's Military, which should be a very interesting discussion. Thank you for joining us today. For producer Lisa Godley, audio engineer Perry Smith, Crystal Romney, who answered our phones, I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Have a wonderful weekend. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. And let's get together again next Friday at noon for another view.